Hone, could you give the committee an update from the recent Commission for Conservation of Southern Bluefin Tuna, the meeting that was held in Seoul, the 22nd annual meeting?
As it happens, we've got the Australian representative at the table, but not from fisheries.
I've only got two questions relating to some criticisms that were made of Australia, but I'd be very keen to just get an update.
Sure. We had the meeting over the last 2 weeks. The general outcomes were that Australia, the Commission agreed to maintain the total allowable catch for the 3-year period that had already been established several years ago. So the science had come in, advice was to suggest that we could continue to safely harvest at that level without threatening the recovery plan. We had some success in finalising an expanded budget for the research that underpins the management procedure and the science that goes into that. And that was took quite a lot of time, but we were very happy with that outcome in that the...
Saved on the bell, I heard.
Saved on the bell, yeah. Right. We just got there. The other thing where we made progress but we didn't completely achieve success was for several years now we've been trying to get up a binding measure in relation to the impact of fishing for southern bluefin tuna on ecologically related species. Yep. And we had the success, the element of success we had is we now have all members except one supporting this binding measure. Previously Taiwan had opposed the measure. They now find themselves able to support it. And unfortunately Japan still does not wish to support the measure. And that was, I think, a disappointment from our perspective.
You were expecting them to? You had that expectation?
We were hoping that, given that we've been working with them intersessionally over the last 2 or 3 years, that New Zealand in particular had worked with them to try and come up with a binding measure. We were hoping that they might move forward, and in fact, a small win was that we have agreed some minimum performance requirements for the fishery, not binding measures, but they now give us a mechanism which enables the compliance committee of the Commission to be able to assess the performance of each country against those measures. So we're beginning to get more observation, more counting, more awareness raising of the impact that the longline fleet in particular is having on ecologically related species, seabirds and sharks and things.
So how much uncertainty is there around southern bluefin tuna being caught by non-members?
That was another element of the discussion, in that the last year or two there's been an increasing focus on what is happening to the catch outside of that which is allocated to the members of the Commission. So there's a number of sources of what's called unallocated mortality. One of those is discarding. One of those is, as you mentioned, catches by illegal fishing, if you like, catches by other entities that aren't represented around the table of the Commission. And also, in Australia's case, our recreational catch is not accounted for in the allocation. Yeah. And so...
And did Australia come under criticism for that data collection issue?
We came under some criticism. The commitment that was made last year was that over the course of the next few years, leading up till 2018, members would begin to measure and do their best to try and deal with the catch that they have a direct responsibility for. So in our case, recreational catch. In the longline fleet, it'd be discards and freezer losses and the like.
And for commercial catch as well, was there issues? Right?
No, commercial catch is was agreed, but the non-member catch, there's other activities going on in relation to that. So trying to make representations to countries like China to join the Commission, to get them to participate in the Commission's work. But I think we were criticised a little bit because we were following the timeline of the commitment, which is that by 2018 we need to begin to account for these things. Our position is that we should, and as should other members, we should be accounting for these when we've got a good handle on what the impact is, what the size of the catch would be. So we're spending quite a bit of money in relation to recreational catch. Mr Neil might be able to help me out on that. We've almost completed, ABARES has done some work on the methodology for doing a survey of recreational catch in Australia, because it is significant. and we need to then figure out, have that survey done. We also need to figure out what's the best way to account for that in the Australian context. And we were criticised because some countries were expecting much faster progress, but we're sticking to the timeline.
My understanding was that some didn't feel like what you just said then was adequately addressing the issues.
Yep.
And is that because you're not that far down the track with...
Yeah, I think there's a statement in there where, and indeed one of the countries has already made, if you like, a best endeavours estimate of what their recreational catch might be, and they've accounted for that for some time, and so there's a fair bit of pressure on to sort of come up with a number and just put that out there and say, okay, we're going to start to allocate that. And our strategy and the requirement that we have at the Commission is simply to outline what our plan is, how we're moving towards it, that 2018 date.
Can you give us an idea on when that you'll be confident in those kind of considerations?
I guess we're going to have to be confident in the next couple of years. The survey is quite complex and in terms of getting an accurate measurement, and it's also expensive in that from time to time state fisheries agencies do measure recreational catch on Globo for all recreational catch. They don't do it every year. They don't necessarily stream it out for Southern Bluefin Tuna. So we have to work with the states to be able to get that information, make sure they include it in their surveys. So that's what the ABARES work is about, which I think we're about to get a report on by the end of the year, I think. So,
and have you got sufficient funding to conduct this kind of research?
We'll wait to see how much it's going to cost us to do it from the work that ABARES is doing, but we're hoping we have. Okay,
one last question. In relation to protection of seabirds, in particular albatrosses, is Australia's shown some leadership in that area in terms of reducing the deaths of seabirds? I think I read that Japanese longliners have killed around 4,000 albatrosses in 2014.
Yeah, we're such a small player in relation to albatross and seabird catch because we've got such a small longline fleet. So we're of the order of a couple.
Sorry, Gordon Neal, Fisheries Branch. We have a threat abatement plan and we have measures in place, and we don't have an issue in relation to, and particularly in relation to SBT, of course, we have a small longline fleet operating off our coast, and they're subject to strict conditions. And we're seeking to obviously to have a seabird measure apply throughout CCSBT, and that's the issue that we've been regularly bringing to the Commission.
Is it true some types of albatrosses are facing extinction primarily because of longline fishing? I mean, I'm not saying it's from Australian operations, but in terms of the fishery.
I wouldn't like to comment on that. That's for other experts to say. The large seabirds are a big priority for us as we operate in the Southern Ocean, and we have, a very strict threat abatement plan that's just been reviewed and renewed. So we take seabirds and particularly, of course, the endangered ones very seriously.
Okay. And in terms of the current state of research globally around the Southern Bluefin Tuna industry, presumably it's a collaborative research amongst different countries, but is it true that the species is still at 9% of its original population level? Is that an accurate representation?
I think that's roughly right. There's the scientists give a range of what the spawning stock biomass is at age 10, I think. I'll probably get that wrong, but it's of the order of 9%, somewhere between 7 and 12, but I think people tend to use 9%, which is a small increase since the management procedure's been introduced. It was down around 5%, I think. So and there's some debate about whether that's due to the management procedure or not, but we're sort of moving in the right direction in relation to the stock, but it's still at very, very low levels, and so that's the importance of maintaining the research that underpins this management procedure.
But at a level enough, you think, to increase the quota of allowable catch?
Well, that's what we did. That was the catch went up slightly in a conservative way to make sure we hit our target in 2035 of getting back to 70% chance of getting back to 30% of the spawning stock biomass, which has been the long run objective. for the last 3 or 4 years.
But on a historical basis, what is the catch set at now for us compared to what it used to be? Just as, to give the committee a... just roughly...
I think we're about 5,500 tonnes is our share of the global TAC of about 14, almost 15,000 tonnes.
Right.
Japan and Australia, we've gone back to what our historical percentage share of the catch is.
So that's what it used to be during the Dean Lucan days kind of thing?
Oh, I'm not sure.
No?
I think
Yeah.
no. I think it,
No.
I thought it would have thought it'd be a lot higher.
no.
Yeah, no, that's since we've, when we commenced the commission and the original quotas were set, we're now back to 4 years ago, we substantially reduced everybody's catch, and prior to that, Japan had substantially reduced its catch. And what we've done now is return to where we were 5 years ago, but that was under a quota management scheme and doesn't reflect the free-for-all that predated the existence of the commission.
But do you know what, under that licence regime before the quota system, roughly what tonnages were being caught? Was that recorded or?
No, well, they would have recorded it. We can take it on notice.
I'm just interested from historical.
I mean, when quota came in, it went to 5,265. The previous years, it was around about 18 to 20,000.
Right.
Now, this is back in the mid-80s, and so the data is not as good. And it was probably pretty clear that when we I was in South Australian Fisheries at the time, working with the precursor to AFMA. When we started to get those original data, that's why the CCSBT quota fishery came in, and it was one of the first quoted fisheries in Australia.
Okay.
We can provide you with the catch going back, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. It's an established chart which we're happy to provide to you on notice.
Has there been any guesstimates about what non-member countries might be catching? Has there been any intelligence on that at all?
There's been, I think, guesstimates that have been made, but I think it's anyone's guess at the moment.
But is there concerns it could be higher than the existing catch? Last question, Chair, promise.
No, it's not of that order.
Not of that order.
Not
Okay.
of that order. I think
We have been looking at that question, done some preliminary work, and looking at boats that operate in the areas where the Commission's boats operate, and we'd estimate that it's difficult to reduce data that actually hasn't been finalised yet, but it's containable and manageable. It's well below what we currently catch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you for your cooperation.